Alright, here we are outside the Dreyfus building where Noam Chomsky has his office, so we've got about half an hour.
The interaction with Cuba, which of course is hated here officially, and since it's officially hated, it's hated by the media, the intellectual classes, but it's a very sensible relationship. I mean, they have an interaction in which Cuba and Venezuela are using their comparative advantage. That's what you're taught is supposed to be a good thing. So Venezuela's comparative advantage is oil, basically. So it's providing cheap oil to Cuba and to other countries, including downtown Boston, for poor people. But so that's its comparative advantage. Cuba's comparative advantage is education and health, as incomparable health services for any third world country, in fact probably better here. And it's sending thousands of doctors and teachers to Venezuela, and they're not like the professionals in their own countries. These are people who go out into the rural areas, into the slums, set up clinics, do literacy programs. They're hated by the Venezuelan professionals because the Venezuelan doctors won't do that. They want to be in the city, it's pleasant and so on. They're not going to go out into the rural areas, but that has an effect. I've seen the same all over the world.
Dr. lives here and it's a health center.
Yes, the Cuban doctors. I think that they are too. So if you had a flu, you get to the hospital. If you got hypertension, you got to the hospital. But now you don't have to move there, so you can have to have medical attention. So that is good because you get your medical attention right next to your house. You don't have to walk. You receive the medicine, and these medicines they are totally for free. You get those right away from the doctor's hand. Most of the medicine, they are Cuban made. And some of them, the few of them, they are Venezuelan generic medicine. They are not, they are not sweet. They are very bitter, but they are very effective too. You won't find a Barrio Adentro ambulatory health center at any place in the east of Caracas where rich people live. That's not happening. That's happening only on poor parishes.
Already we could see the Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro influence on the streets in Venezuela.
When I was in South Africa a couple of years ago when a big contingent of Cuban doctors came. This is after apartheid. This is years after apartheid. Cuban doctors came. They were welcomed by the population. They thought it was great. They were hated by the doctors, mostly black doctors. And the reason is that the Cubans are going to go to places where the black doctors won't go. The black doctors are like other professionals. They want to live in nice places and so on. They don't want to live in some miserable village often way out in the countryside. But that's where the Cuban doctors go, and that's where the Cuban teachers go. The scale is enormous. I don't know the figures now, but I happened to see figures about 15 years ago, I guess, and at that time there were more Cuban doctors working in the third world than the rest of the world put together. Okay, so there's a natural relationship between Cuba and Venezuela. It's beneficial to both, and it's improving lives in Venezuela, and it's improving lives in Cuba. That's what interactions are supposed to be for. We're supposed to be in favor of globalization, remember, but not when it's doing something that helps people, only when it's helping investors. And it goes beyond. And by now the Venezuelan-Cuban relationship is spreading to the Caribbean. There's a program called Operation Miracle, which is funded by Venezuelan capital, a lot of money, from oil export And it's the people carrying it out are Cuban medical personnel. They go to places like, say, Jamaica, and the Cuban doctors, right now they work mostly on blindness, but other diseases. But so they'll find people who are blind, but who could be surgically cured. There are many such cases, and they take them to Cuba, where they have advanced medical facilities, and they restore their sight. These people go back to Jamaica, and it makes an impression. You go back to somewhere in Jamaica, and you've had this person, people who are blind, now they can see. As an effect, it's driving Washington crazy. And that's spreading, and in fact, it's spreading right here. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe months ago, a group of senators approached the 8 major oil companies and asked them if they could provide low-cost oil over the winter for people who simply can't pay their heating bills because the way the price of oil is going up. Well, they got one response from Citgo, the subsidiary of the Venezuelan state company. So yes, now Citgo is providing low-priced oil to poor people in Boston and South Bronx and so on, and that has an impression. And of course, it drives Washington up the wall. Nobody's asking why the other 7 companies didn't do it. They're all much richer, but they're not going to do it. Well, that's, those are differences. They have an effect in the world.
Esa parte se introduce aquí, se baja, ¿no ves? Este te lo cocino, ¿ves? Este sí. Es nuestro comandante en jefe Fidel Castro Cruz. Con el amigo, el que se unió para siempre con él, Hugo Chávez. Hugo Chávez Fría, Venezuela. Que amigos hermanos, son uno solo. Esta es una máquina, es americana, mira. ¿No ves? ¿Ves?